Oh man, I don't know. It feels I need to like it's hard it's because I've got this kind of like jokey tone. I don't want to like suddenly be like, his mother got sick I have to,
Yeah, I know.
like I can't do it. I have to like okay, hold on.
This is like, have you ever heard those outtakes of Casey Kasem trying to do the dedication for America's Top
Yes.
40? He's like,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, how many times I have to do a fucking death dedication coming out of an upbeat tune?
Welcome to Backtracking, the show where two old friends take a second listen to influential bands' catalogs track by track. I am J. William Hall.
And I'm Dan Fiden. We'll be taking this journey together, Jay William and I, providing context, both personal and historical, on some legendary bands. For our second season, we picked none other than pioneering indie rockers, American Music Club. All right, Jay William, it's been, what a week. What a week behind us.
One full whole week.
Here we are, the very beginning of 2025. It's been a blistering 2025. The weeks have been flying by already. How do you feel about the new year?
Well, the new year is always tinged with bittersweet emotions, feelings
Mm,
of nostalgia. You're turning the page on the old and looking
yeah,
forward to the new, but
yeah,
at the same time, you are in the middle of winter and it's very dark and gray and
yeah, yeah.
but
Old Lang
not
Syne.
not not if you live in Hawaii, I suppose.
That's true. No, no. I'll tell you what. This is best weather of the year is right now. We have a It's not much rain. This is kind of the dry season for me where I live. We have nice cool weather overnight, on like last night a little chilly. Sometimes in kind of January we'll hit the upper 50s at night. Yeah.
Ooh,
58 is, occasionally we'll hit. But then
crack
during
the
the
windows.
day, bright, sunny, cloudless days, midday, we'll get up to the, lower to mid 80s. Just gorgeous. Gorgeous, low humidity. Really a lovely time of year here.
I'm happy for you. Um, if you like cold, damp, and gray, then Columbus,
Yeah.
Ohio is the place for you at this time of year.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'll never forget, actually. So we talk about in the intro to backtracking. This is the personal and the historical. Maybe better put, the personal historical and the band historical, but this is our memories as well as thoughts on the band and the history of the band. But I will never forget your description of the winter days back when you were a young man living in Neasden.
In the
And
UK.
yeah, in the UK. And I seem to remember you describing in the shower in your apartment in Neasden, there was a literal hole in the wall that went all the way through to the outside.
That is true, 100%.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
like there had been a pipe or something that went through there and they took it out, but they didn't patch the wall at all. It was just open right into the
So,
bathroom. Yeah.
yeah, and I kind of remember this is the discussion of, some frustration that you were feeling because maybe your roommates wouldn't turn the heat on ever, and the water in the shower didn't get very hot, and there was
Yeah.
just this like cold air that would come in. It
Yeah, we
sounded
had to
pretty bad.
pay, we had to pay for the heat, and so they, we were all poor, and we're like, "No, we don't wanna pay for the heat," so it, like, you could see your breath in the apartment, like, I slept with, like, a winter hat and, like, a coat and, like, in every like, it was bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Why did we
But
do that? I don't know.
it made you into the man that you are today, Jay
That's right, it
William.
toughened me up, toughened me up.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So it prepared you for backtracking American Music Club.
Mhm.
Everything in your life has led up to this moment.
I feel like I'm as ready as I'm gonna get, next man
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I'm here to perform. I'm here to talk about American Music Club.
All right. Well, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's not drag this out any farther. Any further or any
Are
farther? Is it
you
further or
sure?
farther?
Well, I think both are
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. Is that true? They're both correct. Let's not drag this out anymore. Side B of American Music Club's classic sophomore LP, The Long Player Engine. It starts off with clouds.
You know,
4 minutes. Okay.
before we
Sorry.
even get into Clouds,
Okay.
you
Okay.
just described
Okay.
this as their sophomore album, and I thought to myself, the
Mm,
sophomore slump. So many
yeah.
bands, their second album is difficult because they've had their whole lives to write the first album, and then they, have to write the second one
Yeah.
quickly or whatever. And AMC is definitely, I think
Yeah.
a rare case where the second album is, light years better than the first album.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you think of another example of that real quick? Just.
Radiohead would be
You know, I
the
was I was gonna say
yeah.
Radiohead as well. Really a tremendous second album.
Mhm.
Of
Yeah,
course, we're
just
talking
like
about.
in a different league, kind of. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, AMC, I don't know if I would say this is in a different league, but, like, just everything
I
about it is a step up, you know?
I would say it's in a different league. I actually think that it's
Oh,
as much
okay.
of a step up. I think it's as much of a step up. I would maybe argue it's more of a step up than Radiohead from Pablo Honey to the Bends. Pablo Honey, I think, was not a great album like the Bends was, but it was somehow more cohesive and indicative of what the band would become than The Restless Stranger, I would argue. I
Okay.
really think that The Restless Stranger feels more like demos of the
Mhm.
band, and Engine is kind of like a first album than
You know,
than
that
the Radiohead example.
that's actually a really good way to think about it, I think, because it does feel like now that you put it in that, it does almost feel like Restless Stranger was like demos, like they were trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
then Engine is the first one that's a cohesive like statement as a full album. So anyway, without
Well,
further ado,
it's those concise insights, Jay William, that result in me getting paid the big bucks for
that's
podcasting
that's right.
about music.
We are raking it in. We're
Yeah.
talking about American Music Club. It's a money machine. It's a money machine.
All right, so side B, it starts off with clouds. 4 minutes and 1 second, music and lyrics by Eitzel. Just a little preview, guys. This is one of the last fully Eitzel written songs. That's actually not true, but there are two songs on side B that are co-written with other members of the band. Very interesting change that we're going to talk about, but I don't want to jump ahead too much. We're going to get into clouds. 4 minutes and 1 second. Let's get it on. All right, Jay William. There is a phrase in the lyrics to Clouds that always makes me giggle. It is the phrase magic fingers.
I love, like, because I took notes on like which lyrics or whatever I like. I love that line, with a magic finger, I'll smooth the lines on your face.
Yeah.
No bad feelings linger, but your disgust and my disgrace. I don't know, like, I think there's something, they're just visual about it, I guess, of like, like taking a finger and like and erasing lines off of somebody's face, you know?
Yeah, it
Um,
is. It is. I actually think that that full kind of couplet, I guess you'd say, those two lines that you just quoted, taken in the entirety, I think great lyrics. But maybe I'm just childish, but Magic Finger has always made me giggle.
I think you probably first when you first heard this song, you were malformed. You were not Your brain was not
I was
fully developed.
I was malformed, is what you're saying. Go on, go on. I want to hear where this is going.
You were
You son of a bitch.
malformed
You
and
son of a bitch.
everything with the Beavis and Butthead, oh, the magic thing, you know, and that stuck, and so now that's in your head, and you're still
Uh,
thinking, "Oh," you know, if you heard it
wow.
today for the first time, you'd be like, "Ah, it's beautiful imagery."
You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. Okay, so but they are evocative. This is another example for me lyrically. A very evocative lyrics with some great lines in it. The "Your disgust and my disgrace" line is a good example. But but again, another example of lyrics here for me that I just had a difficult time getting inside of. I couldn't quite parse these. These felt much more impressionistic.
Mm.
Um, and but based on what you said in the last episode, maybe that's your cup of tea.
Well, I think, it definitely was my cup of tea back in this era. I mean, I was of course, like early REM, the
Yeah,
super cryptic, mysterious, you could interpret it any which way and just interesting language and, like, I still love those kind of lyrics. So the, as much as Big Night, you know, it's very like open-ended.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
no exactly, he's singing about, but there are some great turns of phrase and visually, like, cool, lines in the song. Um, I will find one now. Oh, just, like, the whole, like, "Here they come, they've got shotguns and
yeah,
transparent skin, and
yeah,
they'll stand around like rain. They all want in, so come on in, you're welcome." Like,
yeah,
well, first of all, I did maybe this lyric is not correct on this website that I'm looking at because I always
yeah.
thought it was they'll stand around my grave and they all want in, so come on in. But on here it says they all stand around like rain. Anyway, like I prefer my version.
Okay, well, we should send that. That's a note that we can share with Mr. Eitzel.
Right, right.
Mark, I know that you're listening. It's just a thought. Just Joel's just got a thought. A little
Yeah,
feedback.
yeah.
Take it or
You
leave it.
know, we're workshopping this, right?
Yeah, the song's only 40 years
There
old at
there are
this
no
point.
bad ideas. There are no bad ideas. The song is a
Uh,
living, breathing thing.
so
Yeah, so anyway, like, the whole scene painted in this, and the fact that it's called Clouds, but there's nothing he doesn't say the word clouds in the song
yeah,
anywhere,
yeah,
and there's something about like I love this song. Like
yeah.
I think there was probably a time where I was like Clouds is my favorite song on the
Really?
album. I
Oh, interesting.
don't feel that way now, but like I still love it. I loved it as an opener to side 2 cuz when I first heard this album, I heard it on vinyl. So it was like Night Watchman, and then that's like this great closer, and then there's a pause, and then you got to flip the record, and then come, and this one just comes in with a bam, 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 and the vocal starts again, like immediately. That's something on a number of songs on this album. It's like they don't dilly dally with like an introduction to the song. It's just like boom, here comes the vocal. We're
Yeah,
right in it, and I felt like
yeah.
that was such a strong way to start side 2. It's a very like it's almost like a muscular kind of it's more of like a rock, kind of song.
It really is. Moving into the music a little bit, it really is a very straight ahead rock song that's been slowed down. If you just think
Mm,
about this song at like 2x speed, it almost is like a 1960s style rock song. Like if you think about that like ding 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 um
yeah, you could do it more up tempo. Yeah.
I mean, it almost feels like in I mean, it really is like a 1950s, late 50s Beatles type song.
Hmm.
Um, it really has a very classic old school rock and roll structure. But what's interesting about it is they've really slowed it down, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that's what I think is so interesting. But if you listen to, I'm telling you that like that guitar, that Voody guitar part, one bar before the chorus. every chorus. There's one bar, and he does this little thing on the guitar. It is. I'm telling you, listen to that. Actually, maybe I'll cut in a little clip of that right now so you can hear what I'm talking about. So you see, Jay William,
Well, it's
what I
apparent.
mean. It is
He also
apparent.
does a really great, it's a pretty short solo, like late in the song, but it, again, it's just like perfectly placed,
Yeah,
tastefully played. It's in, it's out, like it does its job, and I just think the structure again of this song, like so many on the album, where they really spent time figuring
yeah,
out which instrument's going to come in where and do this, and
yeah.
it has thought to it.
Yeah, I will tell you another thing that I wanted to kind of throw out there. We've talked a little bit in the past, when covering the Restless Stranger and this album about slowcore, American Music Club as an influence to the later, more kind of, I guess, canon slowcore bands. Um, this song, when I kind of re-listened to this, the production on this song really struck me as being very slowcore. It has that wash of guitar sound that reminds me of Slowdive and Cody.
Hmm. Yeah,
You know
you're
what I
right.
mean? That really, or even like the early Verve kind of has that sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost just like a background, like
Drone, wash.
yeah, it's a little shoegazy, honestly.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
just kind of this like slightly grungy kind of like, yeah, big open chords that just fill the space, in the
yeah,
background. And this one has it throughout. Um, but then it's, when Voodie does do the solo or whatever, it's a more traditional kind of rock guitar kind of solo. Um, just really solidly structured song. Again, like I don't know if they were aiming to like try to get this on radio, but it's like everything about it seems like it could do that, but then they undermine it a little bit. Like,
yeah,
in
yeah,
this case probably with the tempo, or like the vocals are mixed really kind of low in this
yeah.
song. They're almost like buried a little bit, and the lyrics are so opaque, so those things would, make a radio station be like, I'm not going to play this,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
1987.
Yeah, I think that mix actually that you just mentioned that may be another way that the production kind of reminded me of like Slow Dive or something like that, for example.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this song, I don't know. This is not one of my favorite songs on the album. I actually would argue this is one of the weaker songs on the album, but the production approach, I do feel like is super interesting. And if you were to look at this album in its entirety and try and say, okay, what are the songs that were most influential to like slowcore, that whole thing, I would probably pick this as one of them. Not because I personally think it's one of the stronger songs, but I really do feel like I can't think of an example of production like this that that kind of predates predates this song that's as obviously kind of connected to the slowcore bands that came soon after. It's a very weird way to parse that statement, but you know what I mean. Like you kind of think of like the most obvious influences for bands, like probably were bands that those people were listening to 5 to 10 years prior to them actually being in a band, right? And
Yeah.
so if you think about that window, I can't think of a lot of bands that kind of had this kind
You
of
know, this song in some ways it's almost a combination of like it's got a slowcore vibe to it, it's got a little bit of shoegaze vibe to it, it's got a little bit of country rock bar band vibe to it.
yeah,
um it's like all of those things are kind of present here, and Eitzel's vocal in this song, you know this album, the thing that is such a leap forward for him, is that he's more restrained on this
yeah,
album, but he still becomes unhinged at at moments in different
Yeah,
songs, and when he does, it's so much more effective. Like,
yeah,
you think about where he starts on this song, and it's like, super mellow, storm brings a value, and
yeah,
then by the end, he's like, "You wanna get excited,"
yeah,
he's like
yeah, yeah,
screaming, and but it's like the band kind of like holds it all together, and it allows him to kind of like go up or come down,
yeah,
and I d- that's just what kind of struck me, just about this
yeah,
album, just
yeah,
the arrangements are so good.
yeah, yeah. Well, is there more to talk about with clouds, or should we go ahead and move on to Electric Light?
Move on.
All right, let's move on. Second song on side B of Engine is Electric Light, 3 minutes and 4 seconds. J. William Hall. This was written by Mark Eitzel and Tim Mooney, credited
Interesting.
here. Yeah,
Interesting.
Tim Mooney credited with co-writer credit. So why don't we give it a listen and see if we can figure out where Mr. Mooney may have contributed. Okay, so lyrically, Jay William, I feel like this is another very improvisational lyric. So, there are at least as many of these more improvisational lyrics on this album as there are the more heavily edited or crafted lyrics. I guess is maybe what I'm saying. Or at least that's the way it feels to me. But again, the chorus in here is so much more kind of easily articulated um, than on anything that you saw on The Restless Stranger. This is a song that feels a little bit more like it could have been on The Restless Stranger, except that it is arranged, kind of structured in a much more traditional way than anything on The Restless Stranger was. And I think it's, um, you know, at least partially because of that kind of well, like easily discernible chorus with that "I'm never going back again"
Mhm.
lyric.
Yeah, for it as sort of like unhinged as it seemingly gets. Well, first of all, like
Okay,
you want to talk about slowcore.
yeah,
Like this song is the most slowcore. Like, you think about the intro of this song, how it kicks. Well, first, I love the false start on this one, where it's just the single piano
and
note going, and you
yeah,
hear that guitar kind of like, and it's like it sounds like somebody started to come in too soon and then stopped, and then it
yeah,
kicks in,
yeah,
and I mean that could be codeine, that could be acetone, like that could be
yeah,
red house painters. I mean, like the tempo and just like the feel. I mean, is that is defines slowcore. I feel like in some way, and
yeah,
so you have that the band maintaining that it's difficult to play that slowly whole way through and to maintain that kind of beat. And then Eitzel, you know, he just goes
yeah,
why verses, but then yeah, when it comes around to the chorus, everybody locks in for this like majestic kind of
yeah.
sounding chorus. I think it's a great, I think it's a great song, but I agree that it must, it taps into that early Eitzel performance, poetry screaming kind of thing.
Yeah, this is one where I really feel like I wonder, I guess, if this song really was a much more unstructured kind of Eitzel performance art thing, and what Mooney contributed was kind of let's make that chorus the chorus. Like let's
Mhm.
do that and let's do that multiple times because really that's all it takes to break those more performance arty sections up a little bit into to make it all of a sudden feel like a more traditional song that you can kind of sort of sing along to, I guess.
So here's the mystery for me. Finding
Yeah.
out that Mooney was the co-writer on this. He did not play on this recording.
Yeah.
The
Well,
drummer
yeah.
the drummer listed for this song, and it's the only song on the album that this drummer, Tim Vaughn,
Yeah.
plays on. And I did I did a little,
Okay.
deep diving on Tim Vaughn just to try to figure
Yeah.
out like, oh, was he in a band like Translator? And the only credits that I could find for him was he would go by Tim, quote, Professor Rock Vaughn, and
Oh, I like
his
that.
only credits that I could find were this one American Music Club song and something called the Bronx City Chicken Machine Volume 2 Creamy Electric Santa. I don't
Wow.
know if this is the same Tim Vaughn or if it's somehow like wires got crossed on this website or whatever, but I just thought that was funny. Anyway,
Well, I think we should start calling people in the phone book with Tim Vaughn and be like, I'm looking for Tim Professor Rock Vaughn.
I'll send you the link to this other song and you can put a clip of it and we'll see if it sounds similar to Electric Light.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna guess that's probably gonna be a no, hard no. Okay, so I think we're kind of coalescing around a similar perspective on this. This is one of the probably the most of those performance art songs on this album. But as I said before, I really think that what kind of sets it head and shoulders above what's on The Restless Stranger is that arrangement and that repeated chorus, and the fact that that
Mhm.
repeated chorus is such a memorable
Effective,
lyric.
the backing vocals in this song are
Yeah,
great. Like they just hit it like every time, and it elevates that chorus. Um, and Eitzel, this one, I have a note that his performance at times reminds me of Nick Cave in
yeah,
this
yeah,
song. He
yeah,
kind of gets
yeah,
into that kind of like crazy preacher sort of mode
yeah,
at times, but the band is smooth and like locked in behind him. Like they hold it together while he like erupts over top.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, did you know that there's a video for this song?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh
Oh,
man, you gotta
interesting.
yeah, you gotta look it up. Like I was shocked when I found out like A, that they made a video at all during this era, and B, that this was the song they made the video for. And I read or I saw some interview with Eitzel later where he was like, oh, he didn't like the video, but um I think it's pretty cool. Like if I had seen something like that, on MTV like in 1987, I think it would have, made me
That
take
is,
notice.
I thought the first video they did was for Rise.
That's the first one I was aware of, but this
Yeah.
one,
Huh,
was
really
apparently
interesting.
made. Yeah, so
Wow, that's cool.
go find it on the YouTubes.
Uh,
And there's a woman in the video because it's Eitzel and a woman, and it's sort of like this arty black and white kind of thing. And I was like, the woman kind of looks like Carrie Russell, that actress who was on
yeah,
The Americans,
yeah.
but then I was like, oh, it also kind of looks like Kathleen
Kathleen.
from
Yeah,
Kathleen Burns, of
yeah,
the
yeah. Oh,
song and whatever.
I don't know that I've ever seen a picture of Kathleen Burns.
I felt like there was a picture of her inside one of the albums, the later ones,
It
or
could,
Mercury,
it,
maybe.
it's possible. It's possible.
I don't
I
know.
don't remember that. Yeah, I don't remember
Anyway,
that. Yeah,
this is obviously like a low budget video that they made for
yeah,
Electric Light, but I was like, so maybe it was like, him and her, or I don't know. Anyway, that's
yeah,
just something I'm wondering as I'm poking
yeah.
around.
And I think honestly, the last point I want to make, you talked about that opening. I would agree that that is like a studio artifact that they probably originally thought that they were going to cut out.
Mm,
I don't like it. I think it detracts from having that in the song. Um, but it really does feel like they used the keyboard to count out four, and it almost is like Vudi is putting his hand on the guitar there to like get ready to play that first chord, and that's that noise you kind of hear. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that just like, all right,
Yeah.
he's clicking it, or he's clicking the little whatever that little switch thing is that You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Something like that. Anyway, I actually think that distracts, but you know, you are a fan, as we know, you're a fan of the lo-fi aesthetic.
Right, yeah. I like
Yeah,
the random whatevers in there.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, so should we move on to Mom's TV?
Um, yes.
Okay, Mom's TV. 4 minutes and 28 seconds. This one is just an Eitzel lyric and music effort here. No one else involved. So why don't we give it a listen and see what we think? All right, lyrically, you can go ahead and tell me, Jay William, if this is too on the nose, but this feels very much to me like it's about his mom, and probably about his mom while she was sick and or dying, kind of reflections on his relationship with his mom. There's certainly, in the book, the Sean Body or Bodie book, there's quite a lot of discussion of Eitzel and his kind of difficult relationship with his family and his mom, this kind of sense that he had that she was, generally pretty neglectful of him when he was a kid. And she had this kind of sense of disapproval of Eitzel. Um, so my interpretation here was, pretty literal. This is kind of a recollection and meditation on his mom and his relationship with his mom.
Yeah, that seems accurate, just, reading the lyrics over, and I think you don't call it mom's TV unless, you wanna conjure the thought or picture of your mom, so,
Yeah.
um,
Or
you
your
know
mom's TV.
right. But it's, I mean, the lyrics again, they kinda straddle, like, they have some really sort of more kind of impressionistic, poetic lines mixed with things like, "Why do you hate me so bad?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was the best friend you ever had, like,
Yeah.
like, real direct,
Yeah.
language combined with poetic,
Yeah.
language, and it has a recognizable chorus, you
Yeah.
know? But again, like, this totally, slowcore, like, this is laying the blueprints, for slowcore, this song, like, the sustained mood, just that real, like, slow, kinda grim, tired
Yeah.
mood, and combined with but it builds to this like super cathartic chorus,
Yeah.
like, the biggest chorus on the album. Um, I
Yeah. Just
think it's great.
the Yeah, the noise. I mean, it's that wash of noisy, distorted guitars that you hear in Clouds as well. I mean, it really is, in retrospect, kind of on backtracking this album. I don't remember this album. When I was kind of in the heat of listening to all of the slowcore bands that I was really into, I probably would have bucketed American Music Club in a similar very large bucket, but I don't remember. I, I didn't really consider them all that close to a band like Codeine or Red House Painters. You know what I mean? That was not
Mm-mm.
something I really thought of very much. And re-listening to this here, it really is clear there are a lot of songs in here that fit
Yeah.
right in with that early Red House Painters kind of, because they would do the same thing. It was kind of like some real. I mean, I think the difference maybe is Red House Painters, when they were slow, they were slower.
Mhm. They took it
And
like a
when
step further. Yeah.
Yeah, and when they did the guitar, the big wash of noisy guitars, they took it a step further in that direction as well. But
Mhm.
there's no denying that this is similar and must have been very influential on Kozilek. We've talked about this in the past. Um, the Mark Kozilek Mark Eitzel connection, them being in San Francisco at around the same time. And I was able to, this is a total side note, but since it's come up a few times now, I read this past week that in fact Eitzel was the person who got Red House Painters signed by 4AD. He handed the Kozlik demo to the head of 4AD, who he was friends with at some point, and that's what led to the signing. So, I mean, undoubtedly there was a musical connection and mutual admiration there, and probably a step beyond that, which again is interesting. I didn't know that prior to this process.
Oh, I did not know until I think somebody left a comment in on the Reddit about.
Yeah,
I think you had said something about like, oh, I think AMC had influence on Red House Painters, and they were like, oh, definitely. Like,
yeah,
Kozlek wrote about Tim Mooney, who is the co-writer of Electric Light or whatever. Like, and he ends up
yeah.
the drummer in AMC. Later on, he was the drummer in Sun Kill Moon for some
Oh, I
portion of
didn't
it.
know that. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
and I
Oh
guess
gosh, yeah,
him and Kozilek were really good friends, and so Tim Mooney died kind of unexpectedly, in 2011, 2012, something, and so Kozilek wrote a song about him, and that's what that person was linking to. So I was like,
yeah,
oh, it kind of like brought it together a little bit that like, yeah, like, Red House Painters was just kind of in its nebulous stages, maybe at this
yeah,
point, but the bands that they were looking up to on the immediate scene
yeah,
included American Music Club.
yeah. In my recollection, I mean, we'll have to dig into this a little bit later since Red House Painters has come up so much. But my recollection is that when the first Red House Painters album was released, Kozilek was really young. He was like very early 20s or late teens. Isn't that right? Or am I misremembering that?
I always assumed he was like 24 because that was
Because of the
isn't that
song,
the yeah, that's the opening song,
because
and
of the
I
song
thought like,
24.
oh, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, that's some homework for us. Maybe a later season, Red House Painters.
Yeah, the
Um,
the only last thing I want to say about Mom's TV is part of the drone thing that's going in the back. I'm pretty sure is Ebo. Voodie's got some
ooh,
Ebo action. I think he's got double Ebos going, one in each channel, and they're just
really?
holding long sustained notes. Yeah, and just that's what's creating the
Yeah,
sound.
yeah.
Um,
The EBO. Do you wanna share for our non musician friends what the EBO is?
Yeah, the Ebo is this little doodad that it's like it like emits like a light, and you turn it on, you hold it over the string on your electric guitar, and it just makes it's almost like running a bow across the guitar. It goes, "Ooh," it can just go on
Yeah,
forever or whatever. And
yeah.
you know, guys like I want to say the Edge maybe was an Ebo
Yeah,
guy, and although I forget, but like Echo and the Bunnymen, like
yeah,
Ebo kind of came on the scene in the 80s, and I'm pretty sure that's what Voodie's got going here.
yeah. And I believe, isn't it that it's an electromagnet that vibrates the string?
Yeah, it makes the
Yeah,
string sound
yeah,
and vibrate. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right.
It's good
Well,
effect.
listen. Yeah, we're going to leave a link with our referral code for
Right.
ebo.com/backtracking. You know, order
Go out and
now,
get
you
your
get two
Ebo.
for the price of one.
If you want to
Okay.
get that Voodie guitar sound, you got to have that Ebo.
All right. So, should we move on to one of the more controversial songs on the album, Art of Love?
Yes.
Okay, 2 minutes and 48 seconds. This one, guys, was a group effort. Eitzel, Vudi, Norelli, and Mooney all credited. Interesting on this one because two drummers are credited
Hmm.
as writers. Now,
That
who
is
actually
interesting.
who actually played drums on it? Did either of those
Um,
two?
the drums on this one are by it's Norelli.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Sluggo on the drums. Let's give it a listen. 2 minutes, 48 seconds, Art of Love. Okay, so there's a lot to discuss here in the lyrics, but I do want to point out one of the funniest lyrics on this American Music Club album, and I will posit on any American Music Club album, is the moment in the lyrics where Eitzel says, "My friend Misery, my friend Misre." It's just very funny.
Yeah, that is a good line. This whole song to me, like this is the song that I think is sort of the one that like if you had to kick one off the album, it would be this one. It feels akin to on Restless Stranger, like one of those
Yeah.
like character songs, like I'm putting on this persona now, and it's this like crazy drunk,
Million
ranty
dollar
thing.
song. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and, I think, like, this song feels like it started as a jam, and they had fun jamming it, and he kinda came up with some lyrics, and they were like, "Yeah," and it was probably fun to do live, but you can tell because there's so many recorded versions of this song in all different styles, all different
Yeah.
like, couldn't figure out what the best approach to it was, and so they kinda were like, "Well, they just here's the jam out version, like, we'll put this on."
Yeah. My notes on this one are almost identical. I'm probably going to be a little less generous about this one maybe. It definitely feels like a practice room jam, right? And maybe that's why everybody's credited or why so many people are credited. It's just something they threw together while jamming and but the question I have is like why include it, why do so many versions of this song? Because I don't see, they must have seen some nugget of interest in this song that I don't, and that's why they tried it in so many different ways, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
just don't, I don't see what that gem is. I also would argue, and we've discussed this, they have a B-side on one of the pressings of this album, the original, this, I think it's this Warner Brothers CD re-release, has a Art of Love goof rock version, I think is what it's
Yeah.
called.
Mhm.
And it's like a bonus track after the last track on the album. It is not different enough from the main version that's on the album for it to be included on the album, in my opinion. And frankly, neither of the versions I think are very good. I just really think it's a kind of a, a I feel like it's just kind of a bummer that they spent so much time on this song. I mean, there must be something here that I can't quite see, but this is
Yeah.
occasionally, Roth and I, when we did season one of Backtracking, I would occasionally kind of, he would cringe when I do this, but I'd say like, one of the things that you want from a producer, I think, isn't just like crafting and interesting, making sure you get good sound out of the studio, or like the engineer is good, or if they're doing the engineering is good. It's a little curatorial, I think, and I would kind of expect a producer to look at this song and say, you know what, guys, maybe it shouldn't be on the album, and definitely, guys, we're not going to record multiple versions of this song. It's just not worth the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think this was probably a song that when they came up with it in the practice room, jamming, it felt really good to play, and they all
Yeah,
got into it, and they
yeah,
became emotionally attached. And they were
yeah,
like, "Yeah, we gotta play this one," and maybe they enjoyed playing it live or whatever. And, I mean, I even, raucous kind of vocal performance on it, but it's very repetitive. You know, I mean,
yeah,
it's sort of interesting. The version on here I wrote like almost sounds like grindcore at parts.
yeah,
Like the guitar is like dunk, dunk,
yeah.
dunk,
That
dunk. There's
muted,
this
that
grindy like chug kind of thing,
it's like
and I
a
was like,
palm
that's
mute.
yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like
Yeah,
if you're charting the rise and fall of a concert, where like they're going from real slow and somber to like, this really loud,
yeah,
aggressive, like, I mean, it shows the range of the band. But I think the most important thing about this song on this album is what follows, because I think like it makes the beginning of the next song hit that much more powerfully because it follows something like this. Like this just sounds almost like a standard rock love song in a
Yeah.
way, you know?
Yeah, I just feel like this song, and we can maybe leave and move on to the next song since you mentioned it. But in summary for me, it just feels like this is a little bit of an artifact from the Restless Stranger kind of version of American Music Club, where
Yeah,
they're
this dates
trying.
yeah, this
Yeah.
dates back. It's in the Restless Stranger demos, so they were already, working on this one.
Yeah, and it's so clear that like Eitzel's songwriting has progressed so much at this point that it's almost like you kind of want them to just bail on all the old stuff and write the new stuff because clearly the new stuff is, it's great, right? I mean, he really is kind of evolved substantially as a songwriter. Um, at least it's very easy to say this in retrospect with actually not full information, but
Right.
on backtracking this, it feels that way, right? Like there was a real step change in the songwriting, and so
Yeah, and I,
dragging
I
along
do,
these old tunes.
I wonder, with the songwriting becoming more polished, as from, on this album, like how much of that was Eitzel himself kind of, you know, making those decisions, or was there like Tom Allen or Voody or whoever being like, hey, what if, we repeat this? Like this is a chorus now, not just, you know,
Yeah.
standalone part or whatever. And like I wonder how much of that kind of conversation happened in the band, when he was coming in with more free form kind of lyrics. But
Well,
yeah.
they talk about that general sense in the book, in the Sean Body book. Um, that Eitzel in the very beginning with the band intentionally did not try to take kind of a band leader role. He was open and encouraging of the other members of the band to write songs and to somehow contribute creatively more like directly
Mhm.
in the songwriting. And he developed a sense that they just weren't doing it. And um and and he became more frustrated that he was giving them a space to doing it, they weren't doing it, and then through this kind of morass the songs weren't turning out quite the way that he'd hoped. And so he, with this album and subsequent albums, was much more like he came to those recording sessions with completed songs. And he was just
Mm.
kind of like, this is the song, right? So, I don't know that there was a moment in time where the switch flipped, but it's definitely discussed in the Wish the World Away book that this is he's kind of stepping into the role of kind of singer songwriter band leader over the course of the first few albums.
The one thing that we haven't mentioned, which I probably should have got into before we even started the album, is there's a great recording of Eitzel doing a solo performance in Columbus at Stashes in November of '86. So it would have been 2 or 3 months before they recorded Engine. And he
Yeah.
does a bunch of solo versions of some songs that do wind up on Engine. So it's a little bit of a glimpse into the songwriting process because they're still in flux. Like the
Oh,
lyrics are
really?
very different. In some cases, there are songs that are like combined. Like he
Oh,
does a
yeah.
version of it's Blue and Gray Shirt actually, which doesn't show up
Yeah.
until the next one, but it's combined with part of Night Watchman. Like, and
Oh,
it sounds
really?
like, yeah, they're meant to be one song, but then he somehow decided to split them apart. And, yeah, he does a bunch of stuff off of Engine. But the lyrics are, again, like they're in
Huh.
flux. So it's like sometime between November and February, like,
Yeah.
he had to kind of tighten things up and make final decisions or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, why don't we move ahead to Asleep, 4 minutes and six
Mm.
seconds. Now, this one, very, very interesting. Jay William, because it is credited to Eitzel and Kathleen Burns, co-writers on this. And I am not
Hmm.
aware of any other song in the catalog that Kathleen gets a credit for. But Kathleen Burns, just to refresh everyone's memory, a friend of Eitzel's, longtime friend, unclear exactly what the kind of dimensions of their relationship were. May have been romantic, may have just been a very close friendship, may have been, who knows what it was. That's never discussed in the Sean body, but they do. He basically cites her as a muse in the book frequently. Do you have more info on that, or you just kind of
I don't.
reinforcing that? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to use the
Well,
word muse.
Muse, yeah. So, but I mean, she definitely is a very prominent figure in the early days of AMC. Whatever her role was in Eitzel's life, it was a substantial role. So why don't we listen to their collaboration? 4 minutes and 6 seconds. Let's go.
Here I come on my bed of nails in the sky.
All right, Jay William. Lyrics here. Some really beautiful lines. Um, my personal favorite is I like to see your city lights all spread around a cheap version of the sky on the ground.
I
But
agree.
Jay William,
Yeah. Great, great lyrics in this song, and it left me really wondering, like, what exactly is he writing about here? Because it feels like on the one hand, he's speaking to a lover, but
yeah,
on the other hand, it almost sounds like, is he like in an airplane, like landing over a city
yeah,
at night, and he's looking out at it? And somehow it's like both of those things in my mind at the same time. And
yeah.
I think the lyrics are great. I love it.
Yeah, I would, I'm gonna kind of cross over into the music here a little bit, but I would say that, you had talked a little bit about Mom's TV, or I guess Electric Light. I can't remember which one it was, but saying in your mind that was like the most of the quintessentially slowcore kind of songs. For me, this was the song, Asleep, actually.
Yeah, I know I just said that a couple songs ago, but I do have to revise my statement because yeah, this one also, yeah. I mean the tempo, like
Very
that's
slow.
difficult. That's difficult for a full band to maintain that, just
Yeah,
that tempo, and the arrangement here feels, much more evocative of like later slow core, especially like Codeine, like because it's
yeah.
distorted guitar and a slow, like heavy tempo.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think another notable thing about this song is in terms of the traditional song structure that I've been haranguing about really consistently on this album, how much he's embraced that and how far kind of his songwriting has moved in the direction of a more kind of traditional pop song structure. This song does not have that at all. It
Mhm.
really lacks any kind of chorus and it's much more um it's much more freeform in a way that the Restless Stranger era stuff is. But unlike what I've said about kind of every other song where I say it reminds me of the Restless Stranger, I like this one.
Yeah.
This one really works for me for some, but I can't quite put my figure on why.
I think it's because of the band. Like they structured, like they worked the arrangement of this song so that it's got these huge emotional highs, and Eitzel gets to, give, like, this is sort of the climactic point of the album, really, like emotionally.
Yeah.
Because the last song is somewhat of the denouement, as
Uh,
we learned in
yeah.
whatever back in the day. But anyway, so like Eitzel, this is, I mean, he gets into like crazy preacher kind of mode here, but the band is just holding this like slow, heavy background kind of, tempo, and Voodie, starts doing some crazy guitar, and I love the drumming on this song as well. There's some really great uh just fills and stuff,
Yeah.
at certain points. I'm trying
Big,
to.
big, it's relatively big drumming, and I actually think that's another thing that kind of is evocative of codeine.
Yes. Yes. And on this one, who is the oh, this one's Norelli. Norelli's on this
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, I love how it gets so quiet,
yeah,
at different points to like super high emotional, and then it just falls back down again,
yeah.
and the lyrics somehow they, match the music in a way, and yeah.
The
Yes.
the song feels exhausted, right?
Mhm.
The emotion that I'd kind of say that this song expresses more than anything is just like physical and emotional exhaustion, which feels good somehow towards the end of the album. You know what I mean? It's this. I don't want to say it's cathartic because I don't feel like it's cathartic kind of relative to the rest of the album, but it feels like you're kind of approaching the ending and you kind of feel at the end of this album a little bit emotionally exhausted.
Yeah, I mean the final hit of this song when they hit it, the guitar, he's doing kind of a slidey. He goes,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's almost
Yeah.
like powering down, like
Yeah. Yeah.
after this like super heavy emotional performance by Eitzel, and yeah, and then I think it segues into the final song like just beautifully.
Yeah. And you know who else segued into the final song beautifully?
Who did
You
that?
did, Jay William. You just did it right now.
Me,
'Cause
I
it's
I
time.
did that.
It's time to move into the last song on side B of Engine, a real classic, a true classic. This year, 3 minutes and 1 second. Eitzel lyrics, Eitzel music. Let's go.
That you can contrive has no desire to survive, to survive.
Ah, okay.
This
What do you even say about that one? I want to start, Jay William, with the lyrics. There are just so many simple, beautiful lines in this. The
Mhm.
sun upon the sea, did you dress that way for me? I mean, just so beautiful. And then the chorus lyric is an absolute, it's just crushing. And anything beautiful that you can contrive has no desire to survive. It's just woof,
That's
and then
brutal. Yeah.
of course, watch my family tree burn down, clearly, a reference to what he's been going through over the course of the year prior to this. Love is the most beautiful killer of them all. I mean,
Yeah,
just
I mean, to
awesome.
me, like that's the last line on the album, and it in some ways sums up just like
Yeah,
the total emotion of the whole album, because they're this whole album is about, love in different sorts of ways, and just how difficult and tragic and
yeah,
um and beautiful but like painful kind of thing. And
yeah.
I think it's just an incredible closer. It really brings the album full circle in terms of mood, like back to Big Night again, like
It
no
does.
drums, no
Yeah,
drums on this one, just a mood. And you can tell, and I saw in the credits, Voodie plays accordion on this one,
yeah.
and
And that
that's what's
accordion is
creating.
so beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of creating the sort of like wall of sound a little bit, like the bed that everything else sits on. And they do really like subtle harmonies.
Yeah, in the
Um,
third verse they do that, and it really is amazing. It's beautiful. I've got to say, like once you get into the production of the music, I just my first note on this is fuck me, so beautiful, an absolutely perfect song. I had forgotten how great this song is, and it's just a little gem. It is not a minute longer than it needs to be. It does
Mhm.
nothing that it doesn't need to do, and it does everything that it needs to do. I mean, it is just beautiful. And another thing I wanted to mention, so the production here, the accordion you mentioned, which I just think is so pretty, but they have they do a thing in here where it's a moving tempo, right? The tempo changes across the song, not like it doesn't speed up consistently through the song, but it just kind of like they slow down and speed up and slow. It's very organic, right? And I think it tends to be pretty difficult to do that well when you have drums in it. But in this, you almost don't even notice it. But it really, those slight slowdowns and speed ups really emphasize these like emotional kind of heart tugging moments in the song. It's just there's so many little things in the production of this that just are perfect. It's just an awesome closer.
I'm guessing that he recorded it live. He was doing the picking guitar part while singing, and that's why when he speeds up or whatever,
Yeah,
and then they just layered kind of the accordion and the vocals and stuff on top of that. But yeah, I mean, again, it's just like, to start the album with that mood of Big Night, and then to go to all these different emotional places throughout the album, and then to bring it all back to this like really lovely kind of, but dark. I mean, love is the
yeah,
most beautiful killer of them all. Like that leaves you on a kind of a woo like note, but um, I think it's just a perfect closer.
yeah. Just an amazing closer. I mean, not too much to say about it more than that. It's just there are some songs on this album that feel like they are dropped from the heaven. There is no way that you could predict the band that made The Restless Stranger opens and closes their next album with these two songs. I mean, right? They're just
Mhm.
they're these songs would fit, in my opinion, as well on Mercury, on San Francisco, on Everclear, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they don't they and I mean that not just the songwriting, but the performances and the production. I mean, this just feels like the band, a couple of examples of the band like teleporting 10 years into their future, and
Mhm.
and they're just a perfect encapsulation of that aesthetic that I think, I really love American Music Club for.
Yeah, I mean, they sound mature suddenly,
Yes.
like they're not embryonic anymore. But
Yeah.
it's all the more surprising after learning kind of the prehistory of this album and what happened between the two albums. Like, you would not have expected this group, A, to release a second album, B, to put something out that was so strong, song
Yeah.
for song, and so strong as a piece, and such a step forward. So, you
Yeah.
know, huzzah! This is the album that
Well,
made me a AMC super fan.
I will predict that for those of you who are listening to this podcast to try and get a sense of American Music Club for the first time, um, if you grab this album, this has a good chance of making you into a super fan as well. They're really, there are some. It's not in my estimation, it is not a perfect album. There are some shortcomings on this album, and there are some other areas, some other songs where I feel like they're not as mature as they get later. But there are definitely multiple places in this album this year, and Big Night among them, that it's just totally fully formed. So, but Jay William,
Yeah, I'm still
we are
here.
to a we are to a point, unless you have other points of order that we need to discuss.
I do.
Okay, all right. I thought you might. I thought you might.
I
Okay.
just I just want to I just want to briefly cover on one of the reissues of this album in the
Yeah.
90s, the Warner Brothers. There's a live version of a heretofore unreleased song called Shut Down, which I think was like
Yep.
an early AMC live staple that they did. And I think it's worth talking about because I think this, you know, it's a pretty cool recording of them performing this song, and it definitely gives you a taste of the AMC experience, like all in one song. You know, it's another one that starts really slow and quiet and somber and kind of pretty, and then it builds to this cacophony of like a full on like noise kind of like freak out for a
Yeah.
good, you know, 20-30 seconds, like towards the end. And then it comes back down to that like quiet whisper vocal
Yeah.
thing. And I think they really pull it off on the recording. I don't know that I would put this on the album, you know, like
Yeah.
or a studio version of this on the album. I think it probably worked better as a live thing. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to mention it because I think it's a worthy addition as kind of a bonus track for this album.
I remember, I forget. I forget.
As we mentioned on the various versions of this release, there are a few B-sides that come out. There's on the CD version of the Warner Brothers reissue that came out in the 90s. There was the Goof Rock Art of Love. There was this one that came
Oh, you
off
know,
of
I think that Goof
uh,
Rock one was actually on the Frontier CD version. Like,
oh,
yeah, because
was it
I
really?
you know,
Okay.
and that's all the more puzzling to me because I feel like that Goof Rock Art of Love kind of like undercuts like the entire mood of the album.
Totally agree.
And I don't know, like,
Yeah,
you
I
know, if
completely
Warner
agree.
Brothers had put it on, I would have been like, ah, that figures, you know, like trying to milk every whatever. But like, why they put it on the Frontier version, I don't know. I would have left it off in
Yeah,
retrospect.
I no, I would totally agree with that. And as I was listening to the version that I have, it's got that kind of bonus track on it. And I was thinking the exact same thing. Like the album has this really incredible symmetry between Big Night and This Year, and it feels so kind of
Mhm.
complete because it begins and ends with those songs. And then when they do this really goofy, jokey, and it's
Yeah,
intentionally
yeah.
jokey, right? I mean, there's no question with that other one, they're trying to show a lighter side. And maybe they just, maybe somebody felt like, gosh, we got to put this on there because the whole album feels too heavy somehow.
Yeah.
But I absolutely dislike that choice. I agree with you, Jay William. It is not the right move.
The Warner Brothers reissue then had live, you know, a couple live tracks and then a third version of Art of Love, which is like an even harder rocking version but also doesn't like elevate the song in any way. So but Shut Down live at the hotel in San it's a worthy track. Good listen.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at a time now in the show
It's
where
the time
everyone wants
of
to
the
know.
podcast when so, sorry.
e- Everyone wants to know, Jay William, what is the best song off of American Music Club Engine? There is a right answer on this. I'm going to put it to you. It's your opportunity to shine. Jay William Hall, what is the
The
best song?
best song on this album is the song that, as I mentioned earlier, I would begin any mixtape. If I were making somebody a mixtape today and said, there's this great band, American Music Club, check them out. The first track I would put on that
Yeah.
mixtape is Big Night, which is also the first track on this album.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to report, Jay William, that you are correct. Big Night is the best song on the album. It narrowly edges out This Year, though. I think that if you had picked This Year, I would disagree with you. I'd be sad to report that you're incorrect, but I would respect the choice. It's close. It is very close. Now, what is the worst song on this album, Jay William?
It's easy. Art of Love is
Yeah.
easily the most kind of
Yeah.
forgettable.
Yeah, it's an easy song to. There will be American Music Club albums where it's difficult for us to determine which song is the worst. There will be albums where we'll say, this one's probably the worst on the album, but it absolutely should be included on the album. It is somehow a necessary part of that whole. In this case, Art of Love is a puzzlingly bad song. It shouldn't have been included on the album. And for God's sake, they definitely shouldn't have tried to record it like 27 different times, which they seem to have. Sometimes you just gotta, you just gotta stop. You just gotta stop. You gotta say, you know what? We
Well,
can't win them all. Sometimes you shank
thankfully they didn't
you shank your head.
continue. What if they had continued to record different versions of Art of Love in like different styles for each
Listen,
album?
who knows what's in the fucking catalog
That's
at this
true.
point? We already know of 3 or 4 versions of Art of Love.
We've
I
got 3
mean,
versions on hand, including a demo that's, its own thing. So we'll find out. Will they continue to record versions
I
of Art of Love?
I hope, I genuinely hope that we have the opportunity to interview Mr. Eitzel. It would be a real thrill and a pleasure. I'm a huge, huge fan. I would definitely ask him first, Mark, what's up with Art of Love, and are you recording a version of it right now?
I would like to hear,
All
different
right.
versions.
Okay, so listen, thank you for tuning in once again. Backtracking Season 2, you can find us on Instagram at BacktrackingRocksROX, on Twitter at BacktrackingRocksROX, on Reddit, BacktrackingRocksROX. Email, it's just backtrackingrocks@gmail.com. And you know what else, guys? Hit the smash smash the like, hit the subscribe, do
Like
the
the hit,
review, send it to a
hit the
friend.
smash the like. You can also tune in high on the hill but low on the dial, 91.1, right?
91.1 in Holualoa, Hawaii. If you happen to be driving by, I have a roughly 5-mile radius depending on where you are on the hill and how long your antenna is, if you know what I mean. All right, there,
Yeah.
guy. Jay William, it's been fun. Next time we'll be back with.
We are going to be talking about American Music Club's 3rd album, California.
Oh, amazing. I cannot wait to get into it with you, Jay William. Thank you for spending so much time with me. You listeners, thank you for spending time with us. Go out and listen to some American Music Club and have a terrific day.
Enjoy your day, everybody.